Welcome everyone to Power Brambos. I'm of course your host, Professor Pride, and on today's Professor Pride podcast, episode 3, we're going to be talking about our 25,000 subscriber and student milestone here on the channel. It's a huge milestone that we're celebrating big time here at PBR. So thank you for subscribing. If you've subscribed, I understand there are certain students that haven't subscribed, and because of safety reasons, they can't subscribe, and I completely understand that. And I encourage you to, subscribe whenever it's safe for you to do so. If it's not safe, don't subscribe to our channel, because it might show up on your feed of like, oh, I'm subscribed to a channel called Power Brambos, and it might out you as LGBTQ. So I completely understand that. So 25,000 subscribers and students, that's just an amazing milestone that I cannot thank you enough for. So we're going to be celebrating that a little bit. Then we're going to talk a little bit about my personal life for a moment, because there's a lot of great things happening right now. Like, okay, so what is it? The 25,000 student milestone, which I call them students, by the way. I don't call them subscribers. I call it like students because it's an educational platform here at PBR. So I really look at this as a classroom, even though this is a TV studio and you're watching from home. This is a classroom where you're learning LGBTQ topics every week. So that's the way I look at it. So you're going to hear me mention 25,000 students a lot more than saying 25,000 subscribers, because I don't look at them that way. This is far from a normal YouTube channel, or this is not like a business venture. This is like a legitimate classroom. So that's the way I look at it. So that's happening this Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time from when you're watching this, which is April 23rd. It's National Day of Silence around the world. It's International Day of Silence, where basically students from around the world stay silent and take a vow of silence in school around the world to participate in Glesson's program, where basically you stay silent because we're not taught LGBTQ topics in school. And so if they're not going to teach us about our relationships, then we're going to stay silent for that one day altogether and protest and make sure they hear us loud and proud when we speak up next. So we're joining that effort with Glesson, and we're going to do a huge 24-hour live stream on the channel here from 12 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on April 23rd. We're doing that on this YouTube channel. It's going to be really exciting for 24 hours for that live stream. Then at 7 p.m. 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going live on Reading Pride Celebration from Reading, Pennsylvania. We're going live on their YouTube channel as well. So 7 p.m. we're going live there. We'll be sharing their event on YouTube as the week progresses here. But that is going to be a huge event where we celebrate National Day of Silence with them and they're inviting me as an author onto their program. So huge thank you to Reading Pride Celebration for inviting me on Friday. I'll be reading my 4th book, my brand new book, Shadow's First Christmas, in its entirety. So on the show here, you've heard about half the story because we wanted people to buy the book, and we still want people to buy the book because it helps support our LGBTQ education show here. But I will say I'll be reading the entire thing on their YouTube channel on April 23rd, and that YouTube channel will be linked in the description of this episode of the podcast. So you can go over there, subscribe, and turn on notifications on their channel to make sure you don't miss out on that once-in-a-lifetime event. It's going to be live April 23rd, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but it will be available afterwards from what I'm hearing so far. But during that live stream, I'll be reading the entire book, doing a live Q&A session, and then afterwards we'll be signing up a whole bunch of copies and sending them to people around the world. So you can order your signed copies of the book right now and over on the website linked on that event. During the event, you can click the link in their description of their video and order a signed copy of the book. So you can get a signed copy no matter where you live in the world, which is awesome. Then next week we have our first ever masterclass on the channel premiering here, airing at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Friday, April 30th. Our first ever masterclass, completely classroom safe, called Gay Relationships 101, where basically we condensed a ton of advice about gay relationships and how to have a successful relationship and how to communicate, a whole bunch of advice on gay sexual education, which we don't get in a lot of schools in America and around the world. We condensed all of that information into it's ended up being like a 50-minute class, so a little bit less than an hour, but believe me, that hour is worth it. It's the class that I never had in school. It's the class that I always wanted in school, and it's completely free online on YouTube next week. So you'll be able to see that, which is so awesome, but you have to be signed into a Google account of someone over 18. So you can trick Google into thinking you're 18 just for a day just to watch it. But and we won't reprimand or report anyone that does that. By the way, we understand you might want that information and need that information sooner than 18 years old. So we're not going to report anyone for doing that. So just be aware you can trick Google into thinking you're 18 for a day just to watch it. But it's so cool because it's classroom safe, where teachers from around the world can show this in their classrooms on their projector in school. And it's so nice because this is the course that I always wanted to give. Ever since starting the show, this is the course that I always thought, and back in middle school and high school, I'm like, you know what? I need this information. I kept asking questions to my teachers about this privately, and they kept saying, well, we don't know anything about this. We're not gay. We're not versed on this. We're not taught how to teach this. So I finally get to teach that course next Friday, April 30th. So that's premiering, and it's going to be available forever for free. So that's pretty awesome. So you get to watch that. And, next month we have ramping up to Pride Month. We have a lot of stuff coming out next month as well. And with everything that's going on, people are like, oh, well, things must be doing great behind the scenes. Like, Matt's got to be so happy, And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm really happy that we have 25,000 students now. I'm so grateful for that. Unbelievably grateful. This YouTube channel has changed my entire life for the better. Because I firmly believe everything in my life led up to this YouTube channel, where, I'm a 9-year-old kid starting a company, literally and legally starting a company at 9 years old. And I'm, out there trying to understand how to tell a story to an audience of a couple thousand people. And I'm going on tour we'll talk about this in a later episode of maybe a Draw My Life episode or something. But I mean, it's kind of so surreal, where that's the world I came from with music. And I started making music videos for my music. I started doing lighting and sound for my stage events. And then that taught me a lot about how to make lighting and sound work for a film company. And I'm still doing lighting and sound for live events. Like tomorrow, you see all the equipment here. It's all going out tomorrow to do a live event for someone. But and that's why we're not in the normal TV studio setup, because half the equipment is going out tomorrow. So even this camera is gone tomorrow, just for a day. But it's kind of like everything revolved around my music career for a long time, where I got to learn how to do lighting and sound so I can do my own stage productions, and go on tour and be a headline tour. And I remember when I was younger, I was, 12 years old, I think, when I first saw my name on a marquee sign of a theater. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm like the headline act tonight. And people are paying and to come into a sold out theater just to see my show. That was surreal for a 12-year-old. And I don't think any 12-year-old is ready for that in their lives, because I certainly got this huge big head on me. I got so narcissistical. Is that a word? Yeah, maybe it's a word. We're going to go with it. But I became so big-headed that I'm like, you know what? I'm better than everyone else, and and that's part of the reason why this show has the title it does of Power Rainbows instead of Matt Haslam, or that's why I call myself Professor Pride on the show instead of saying welcome to the show, I'm Matt Haslam all the time, is because I don't want to get that big head. I don't want to risk that part of my brain switching on anymore. I've worked very hard to get away from that over the years, and so nowadays I feel like I've overcome it, but I don't want to risk it again. You know what I mean? But years ago, as a 12-year-old kid, seeing my name on a marquee outside of a building and seeing tickets with my name on it and people paying really good money to come and see my show, it got to me so much. And I'm like, you know what? Like, I am better than all the other students in school because no one else is getting paid to do what they do. No one else has their name on the marquee outside of the building. No one else gets to, do the school talent show and dictate how much of the show they control and open up the show for everyone else because I'm used to an audience. No one else gets to go home from here and go right to another venue where I'm performing for 5,000 people at a time. Like, no one else in my school gets to do that, No one else in my school had his own business or her own business or their own business. And it got to me really bad back in the day. And that's one of my major flaws in my life, was being a narcissist and having that big head. And I feel like I've overcome that. But, even that experience has taught me a lot about how to act now, having a TV show, or having 5 TV shows on YouTube, actually, because this is not the only show we run, but it's the most consistent one, and it's the biggest one out of all of them. But I don't know, it's like, even that taught me a lot about how to make this show the way it is and not put myself at the center of everything, put myself second to the education, and like in English class back in the day, I remember doing all these reports and stuff like that of like, oh, I had to research all of this stuff, and my teacher was so difficult on me of like, Matt, you need to have multiple sources for everything that you say in this stupid essay for school, and you need to make sure they're credible sources. So I'll say like her name was Mrs. P. I won't say her full name, but like she was so difficult on me. And she's like, well, she literally went through my entire works cited page and she checked every single one of my sources to make sure that I wasn't taking a quote out of context or something of the entire article. And I'm like, don't you trust me? And there were times when I got it wrong, and she's just like, here's a lower score because you didn't get this quote in context, and you got this piece of information wrong, or I messed up a percentage point and of a quote of a statistic, and she's like, you know what? Deduct 10 points for that because you got the quote wrong. I'm like, or in the quote, I would spell something correctly that the original person spelled incorrectly, and she's like, you need to quote it directly, and it needs to be spelled incorrectly like they spelled it, And I'm like, how dare you deduct points for this and like give me a B instead of an A on this essay because of this one little thing. And I'm like, but nowadays on the show, I highly appreciate that part where the research side of this, I get to lead a team now of, I'm so incredibly lucky to have a team. This month, we officially added our 10th team member to Power Rainbows. So we have 10 team members behind the scenes now. It's so incredible where I never imagined in a million years we would have 2 team members, let alone, really, this show was supposed to be 10 episodes in season 1, and that was it. That was all we were ever going to produce, is a coming out advice video, what to expect after coming out, and then like a couple more just fun episodes. And then after that point, it was going to be a vlog of like, hey, I'm just showing you what my relationships are with my boyfriend, and that's it, and even then, I'm like, I don't want to really invite a boyfriend onto the show until a couple months in because it complicates the relationship. I've seen, what was it, Marky Miller and Ethan Heathcote or something like that. They were were in a relationship. They've broken up now, which was sad, but at the same time, they were big on YouTube as a couple, and we've even used clips of them in a relationship in one of our short films to show how normal it is. And I want to show how normal a gay relationship is by showing some vlog footage of a boyfriends together. But then, they've come out both now and said how difficult their relationship became because there were a million people telling them that they need to stay together. And it's like, what you have to understand is any TV show, any YouTube video you watch, this is only, 30 minutes of my life or whatever. Or this is only like clips of my life throughout a whole day. They're edited together. Like, I'm only filming the best of the best. I'm only editing for you the best of the best of that. Like, for instance, on our show, we film every episode for like an hour or something like that. Like, okay, so the Gay Relationships 101, that class was filmed for a total of 4 hours in the studio here. You'll end up seeing only 50 minutes of that. It's like, you have to understand, like, we're filming a scripted show that we're reading through that script 100 times before it's recorded to make sure it's perfect and to make sure it's the best information in the most concise way possible. And then during filming, everything is filmed multiple times to make sure we're getting the best take of that certain thing. And then in editing, it's edited down to the best take of every single paragraph. And so you're seeing a very highly condensed version of everything that we do. And that happens in vlogs too, where, you're seeing a 10-minute video of someone's day, but that was filmed over the course of a whole day or something, or a whole vacation. And so kind of what you don't see on camera, like, obviously I'm not going to show you fighting with my ex-boyfriend on camera. I'm not going to film that while we're fighting or something like that. So you're not seeing that part of the personal life. And so I've always said, whenever I'm with a guy, like, I'm not going to invite them on the show until a couple months in at the very least, just because it complicates things. I've seen it complicate other relationships, and it's nothing to do with, because audiences supporting the creators is wonderful. It's just when you put the pressure on the creators and you're like, you guys need to stay together because you're my only hope for love. It's like, well, no, like, there's other things you don't see. Or like, how come you guys are breaking up because you look perfect on camera? Yeah, we look perfect on camera because that's what we allow you to see in a portion of our lives, So that's why I've kind of like had the rule for a long time of, if I get a boyfriend, they're not shown on camera for a while. But I will say, like, the show over the first little bit there showed it a little bit of my relationships, and I dove into like the X-Files of like stories of my ex-boyfriends and stuff like that. I showed you how my first boyfriend was abusive, for 3 months. I've shown you what kind of warning signs there are to a guy cheating on you, and so on and so forth. And I like that series, but at the same time I feel, in a way, like, well, that's also allowing you to see into my personal life, and I don't know if that's okay. I've debated that for long periods of time there. If the X-Files series on our channel was a good move of ours, I don't know, because maybe a potential boyfriend might see that and be like, well, he might talk about me on camera, Well, then don't be an asshole and don't cheat on me then, But even with it, I've long said, well, here's a situation where I get to help people through the things I've learned the hard way, and so that's why it was put out. And this show blew up last year, and all of a sudden YouTube sponsoring us. We have, crazy amounts of support now, and we have people who are willing to donate time to help us make this show, which I'm incredibly grateful for. We have members who help finance this whole show, and we have sponsors and advertisers and all these great people. It's it's a immense amount of responsibility, but it's not one that I take lightly because I absolutely love this job. And so now that we've hit the 25,000 mark, I I get to like look at the future of the show. Like, well, where can we take this in the future? I don't want this to just be a silly YouTube program. I want it to be a serious education platform. I don't want it to always be in this TV studio here. I see this being a show where we can take it on the road and we can have a better TV studio someday. And, we're looking at cities in the future, like of where we might want to take the show, especially like a neighborhood or something like that. I have the huge dream of moving somewhere like New Hope, Pennsylvania, where it's a neighborhood, it's a great town, and I get to have the show where I get to have guests on the show quite regularly because there's a lot of great activists that live very close by. And there's a lot of small businesses that would support my show and I would support them. And it's also a very accepting neighborhood. But all of this is happening at the same time of this week. So like all of these thoughts are in my head of like, yeah, 25,000 students on the show. That's amazing. We can start planning a huge feature on the show where, not right now. The show can't like finance a TV studio yet, but it's a situation where we can start thinking about these things in the future of like, yeah, if we start getting like 100,000 subscribers or something like that, like we can definitely start thinking about moving somewhere else and having a completely soundproof studio where we can record whenever the hell we want. Right now we're kind of mandated to recording middle of the night or whatever, because there's traffic outside during the day or whatnot, and so we can start dreaming of these things and planning them out, sort of, and forecasting what the financials would look like for that kind of future for us, and it's really amazing that we get to do that, and all these major events happening like in the next 2 weeks. It's really exciting, and people are like, oh my God, Matt, you must be so happy. And I'm like, yeah, professionally I'm happy, but behind the scenes, like this week marks the 2-year anniversary of when I broke up with my last boyfriend. Like, it's not a very good time for me, and it means that I've been single now for 2 years. And I understand there was a pandemic there, but like I've tried dating in the pandemic and it hasn't worked out. People haven't been the right people to date. And I've sort of, for the past long time, been feeling very lonely at the same time of like, oh, I have a massive audience. Sometimes I feel like that audience, not specifically you guys, but I feel like sometimes having a massive audience scares guys away of like, oh, wait, you're a YouTuber, so I don't want to, date you because what if it doesn't go right? Then this is online to 25,000 people tomorrow. And I'm like, that's not the way I would do things. But at the same time, I do have an X-Files series, and I'm like, just don't be an asshole, So sort of what I'm going through this week is this the ups and downs of like, oh, here's what's happening that's great, but just as great as those highs are, there's lows to counter them. And like I can like say it this way, and maybe you felt this in the past too. You can let me know in the comments down below, because I'm deeply interested to know like if I'm not alone on this portion of my life. But certainly the pandemic hasn't helped relationships, and I understand. Like, I know there's gonna be people who are like, Matt, there's plenty of fish in the sea. You'll find your right guy. But you have to understand, for me, I'm a researcher, and so being as much of an activist and as a researcher as I am, I start to realize the more historical figures we look at who are huge activists and some of the best in the world's history, they were single their entire life because people didn't really want to date them for fear of like having to get involved with the activism too. It's like, it's not bad to be involved with LGBTQ activism, but it's also like not everyone wants to be the face of it, and not everyone wants to put their face on camera about it. So certainly in history, we've seen people being single their entire lives because they're out and about trying to make change, but no one wants to touch them, of like touch a relationship with them. And it's like, I don't understand that. Like, people should look at LGBTQ activism as like, oh, you're just trying to help the community, you're just trying to educate people. But then I also have guys who are like, well, I don't necessarily want to date a YouTuber. And I'm like, what? I'm not a YouTuber. I'm an educator. YouTube is just one of the platforms. And I don't want to get involved with you because I don't want to, have to put my name on it. I'm like, you don't. You just can be my boyfriend, and that's it. Like, I'm not going to force anyone to put their name on a movement. But I've had that already, and so you look at these historical figures and you realize a majority of the bigger names in LGBTQ activism for centuries now have been alone their entire lives. And you're like, well, wait, so what? That doesn't make sense. Like, they attract these audiences of gay people in theory with the audience sizes that they've had. Someone surely would have said, hey, you're cute and I want to be in a relationship with you. Well, kind of what you have to understand for me is the other side of it, where like I fear being alone forever because of my activism and because of my show, because I know it's the statistics on it. I mean, it's not hard to find the statistics online, and as a researcher, I'm always thinking things out in facts and figures. So sadly, I know those statistics, and it's hard when you're talking to someone and all of a sudden it goes sour. It's hard not to think back to those statistics of like, oh, I guess those stats are correct for me too now, and I'm not a part of the minority of activists who end up getting a boyfriend forever, or like getting a husband and a family, so it's difficult to like know everything. And it's kind of called researcher syndrome or activism syndrome or something like that, where way too much information and it starts to affect you personally, and you start, rather than researching things and knowing things for an audience and sharing them as facts and figures on a show or in a research paper, you start taking all the data and the facts you've learned about something, and you start internalizing that and start saying, well, wait a minute. I know I'm here on an episode analyzing gay relationships. I know I'm analyzing all this data for other people. And eventually you kind of look internally and you're like, well, wait a minute. Like, let me turn the mirror on myself for a moment and be like, yeah, sadly that applies to me too, and it's eventually you kind of internalize things like that, and it's kind of sad. But so that's been happening. But I mean, like, you start looking at my relationships and you're like, well, it's been 2 years since I've been out of a relationship, and it's been 9 months now or something like that since I've had a date with somebody. And you're like, but there's plenty of fish in the sea, Matt. And I'm like, I understand. That doesn't help what's been happening recently. So, unbeknownst to a lot of people, behind the scenes, like, I'll hang out with my friends or something like that. So, away from the show, I give myself time off from the show nowadays because I think you need that just to clear your head. No matter what you're working on, if it's good, bad, whatever. I absolutely love the work we do here at PBR, but I think you still need a little bit of time away from whatever just to like clear your mind and come back to it later, and that does not mean just going to sleep and coming back the next day to the same thing. No, that means going out with your friends and enjoying your life a little bit, and like thinking about something other than activism for a moment, or thinking about something other than education for a moment, you know? So, one second. So, a little while ago, what happened was I went to a party, and this is like shortly before the pandemic, so it was perfectly fine. But my one friend, who you've seen on the show hundreds of times now, Becca, she's a massive part of our show. She has a huge following on the show here. And one of her friends was having a house party, and where basically she invited a bunch of people to come over and just party and drink the entire night. That's not my crowd, so I really don't get along with or get involved in that at all. I don't drink alcohol at all. So the entire night I didn't even have a sip of alcohol, and I felt like, oh, I'm the outcast here because I'm the only person not drinking alcohol. There's like barely any food, and this is like a house party. It's the first time I've been to a house party in my life. So I'm like, I don't know what to expect, Everyone's drunk. They don't care what games they play, and they'll never remember half the games they play anyway because they're so drunk. And it's an over 21 party, so it was all perfectly fine. Like, you can drink all you want to, whatever, just don't drive home, For me, I was sober, so I left the party and I was like, yeah, I can drive home safely because I'm completely sober. I've never had a drink in my life, so I'm fine. But we're at this party with a whole bunch of our friends and a whole bunch of like their invited friends from that. And all of a sudden, like this one guy who's a friend of mine as a part of our group, of friends, he's really super cute. He's also straight. And so, and he had a girlfriend. And so it's like, yeah, I knew he was straight. I knew he's like this perfectly straight man. He's not gonna, ever go for a guy, and so I'm like, well, he's cute, but there's nothing I can do. So I'm not going to get him anyway. So why should I even try? Like, why would I flirt with him or anything more than I've already done? Like, he knows that I think he's cute, and that's good enough for me. Cause like, he took it as a huge compliment that I thought that way about him. Anyway, we're at this party. He gets so drunk that he starts like allowing me to flirt back with him, or allowing me to flirt with him. And I'm like, what? All of a sudden you're okay with this, And then I start realizing, oh yeah, he's just drunk. Like, this is not him anymore. This is a very drunken state where he doesn't think about things, And I start joking with him. I'm like, well, if I was into hookups, like, this would be a perfect opportunity for you and I. But I'm not into that at all. And I don't want to go there with a friend that's straight, like, I'm not into hookups. This is not who I am. I'm demisexual, so I would want there to be an emotional connection being returned to me as well as me liking you. So I'm like, this is not going to go to where everyone thinks it goes at these drunk parties. I'm like, it's not going there. But all of a sudden, a couple hours later, he gets so drunk that I'm sitting on the couch while everyone else is playing like beer pong or whatever game they're playing, right? Or Jenga. And he sits right next to me and starts like putting his arm around me and then cuddling next to me. And I'm like, well, this is weird, Like, I had that moment of like, well, I mean, he's so drunk, he's not thinking about what he's doing. Maybe he's just trying to get comfortable on the couch. He doesn't know it's me, And I'm like, whatever. He's so drunk, he'll never remember it anyway. And then I allowed my brain to go into this weird mental state. And you can kind of tell me in the comments below if you've ever had these experiences with friends of yours. But I allowed my brain to uncontrollably, I started daydreaming about him really being my boyfriend. Because at this point, I'm single for like over a year, and I'm like, yeah, it's been so long since I've been on a first date with anybody, and I'm like, just for a moment, just for one moment of my life this year, I want to just daydream that this is my boyfriend and that I have a boyfriend again, you know? And all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, this is my boyfriend. We're at this party together. He drinks, but I don't. And that's the way that my other relationships would work if a guy drank. I'm fine with them drinking as long as I'm the one to drive home. So it's like, yeah, we're at this party. We're having a good time with his friends and stuff like that or whatever. And I allowed my mind to slip into this daydream that we were really together as a couple. And it only lasted like 30 seconds to a minute. And that's like the most amount of time that I allowed myself to have in that little daydream. But immediately after that, I come back to reality where it's like, yeah, this is just a friend of mine and he's just very drunk. And this is a party that we're both at just to enjoy our night, you know? And I'm like, you know what? House party is really not my scene. I probably would never go to one again, but I'm like, you know what? Just for that moment, it kind of felt nice to feel like I was back into a relationship, you know? And it was fine. But then the next morning, all of a sudden, I'm realizing, yeah, that was probably wrong to do to a friend of mine. And all of a sudden, I start feeling really terrible that I had this daydream about a guy that I was friends with. And I started feeling absolutely terrible about myself of like, well, this just shows in many ways how lonely I am. And so something's very messed up. I need to find a boyfriend, a real boyfriend. And this is like my brain telling me it's not okay to be single, you know? Anyway, skip forward like months. I'm over it now, and all of a sudden yesterday, so like today is Saturday when we're recording this. You're seeing it on a Monday, but yesterday I'm hanging out with another friend of mine who, again, I know is perfectly straight. He has a wife of like 12, 14 years or something like that. Like, he's very happy. And I would never want to split that up. Even if he was bisexual, I would never want to split that up. He's just so happy. And all of a sudden, like, so we're hanging out. He's a huge ally of the LGBTQ community. And he works with me on an LGBTQ club that we run together along with a bunch of other great people in our county. So we have a county LGBTQ club that he helps run alongside me and a bunch of other people that are absolutely amazing administrators. But anyway, we're hanging out for, I don't know, the upteenth time, but finally we're hanging out at his house, and he shows me like his apartment and his like little man cave or whatever of all of his RC cars that he has, and he gets really deep into this hobby of RC cars. So it's just awesome. You know, people have their own hobbies. I certainly have my hobbies of having different camera gear, and I'm a massive gearhead in that way. So I don't mind someone else having a hobby and enjoying their money and enjoying their time. Perfectly fine. Anyway, so we're hanging out. He's showing me around his all of his RC cars and showing me how it works. And all of a sudden, he's like, "Yeah. Are you hungry?" And so we ended up going for lunch together at a Mexican restaurant. It was really nice. And then we go to, I'm not going to say which park because then you'll kind of know the area, but we went to a really nice state park where it had a giant lake, you know, and we're walking around this lake, and, you know, he has his little RC car and he's like zooming it on the dirt path around the lake, and I'm laughing a little bit because I'm like, you know, you're taking your RC car for a walk. You know, you could have just said to me, "Hey, you know, I'm in the mood to go for a walk, and I'm in the mood to take something for a walk, and me being a furry and a puppy, I'm like, yeah, you could have just taken me for a walk, whatever. But that's a long story. Anyway, so like I said on the channel long ago, this is LGBTQ education, furry positivity, because we're definitely furry positive here and we support the furry community. So anyway, we're on this walk and I'm laughing a little bit at him taking his RC car for a walk around the whole lake. But about halfway around the lake, I have another one of these moments where I'm like, if this wasn't him, if this was any other guy, if he wasn't straight, if this was the first time I was hanging out with someone who potentially could be my boyfriend, well then I would think this is a perfect first date. Honestly, like you look at this situation and you're like, well, I mean, we had a great time back at his house. He showed me his hobbies and his whole apartment, and he showed me, introduced me to his cats. We ended up going for dinner together, and it was a really nice meal together, and we had a great time. We had a lot of laughs. We go on this walk around a lake, and it's really romantic. And if he was gay or bisexual or pansexual, if this was actually a first date, it would have been an absolutely perfect first date up to this point. And it would have been an absolutely perfect moment in this very romantic walk around the lake where we're pretty much alone at this lake. It would have been a perfect opportunity to, try to hold his hand for the first time, or it would have been a perfect opportunity to give him a kiss or something like that. Like, this would have been a perfect first date in my mind if it was a date, And so I'm thinking to myself, he's telling a story about relationships or whatever, right? And because we're just like talking back and forth. And so he's given this little story time. And I'm like, just for a brief moment, I allowed myself to think, yeah, if this was actually a date, this would be a perfect first date, but it's not a date, But then my mind slips into one of these daydreams again. And again, just for about 30 seconds to a minute, him and I are great friends. We hung out for like 9 hours yesterday, and for like 30 seconds to a minute of it is this daydream. So it's not a terrible amount of time, by the way. But for like 30 seconds to a minute of this day on this walk around the lake, I think to myself, all right, what if he was my boyfriend? Like, not him specifically, but I allow myself to think that I'm on a date and I'm just meeting this guy for the first time and things are going well, and I start like daydreaming to myself about like, well, yeah, I'd probably kiss him right now. And we'd go back to his apartment and I would say goodnight to him, but I would definitely, on the way back to his apartment, start planning out when we're going to meet again for a second date, Because, by the way, I'm demisexual. Demisexuals like me, we don't have any kind of like adult fun times on first dates ever. It doesn't happen. We don't go for hookups. We don't do that. Even if it's a perfect first date, the most that happens for me is like, yeah, I'll give you a kiss and be like, hey, let's meet again sometime very soon, because again, an emotional connection needs to be in place before a physical connection there. But for me, I'm like, well, I allow myself this daydream, and I'm kicking for myself for it now, but I'm like, well, it's kind of nice to think about this being a date just for a moment. It's kind of nice to feel like this is a date. And I don't know if it's right or wrong because it's a good friend of mine. But then I slip back into reality and I start feeling absolutely horrible. I'm like, well, now reality is sinking in that this isn't a date. And I was stupid and I allowed myself to slip into that daydream in the first place. But I had no control over my mind thinking about it, I had no control over my mind slipping into this daydream, but I'm the one who allowed myself to daydream like this, So I feel stupid in that way. And then I'm like, you know what? No, this isn't a first date. This is a straight guy. He's in a relationship for 12 years now or more. I would never want to break that up. By the way, if you're watching this and you're that guy, I would never want to break you up. It's just like, I don't know why I had this daydream. And the only way I can justify it is like, well, for most other gay guys, they'll be like, well, if they're feeling lonely, they'll go for a hookup and with a random guy and just get out of their system and get over it. For me, being demisexual, I don't go for hookups, so maybe this is my mind's way of saying, well, this is your version of that, allowing yourself to daydream for a moment of a companion because it's mostly just companionship that you're missing. Well, that's your version of a hookup, and it's harmless, but is it harmless? And I've had this debate for the past 24 hours now of is it really harmless, or is it, I'm using my friends as a daydreaming device, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it yet. But so I'm hoping that maybe some of you have had this happen, not just when you're dreaming at night, but when you're hanging out with your friends, physically hanging out with them. Do you have these moments of daydream where you're just oh, we're in a relationship together, even though you're not, and it's never going to be a relationship with them, but you allow yourself this daydream just to imagine yourself on a date because you're lonely, I don't know if normal people do that. I don't know if a lot of other people do that. Anyway, so that's why I've been pretty sad. It's I don't know. It's been 2 years since my last relationship, and things have not been going well in the dating scene. And I'm just here I am in April, 2 years after the fact, still being lonely when I attract an audience of purely, LGBTQ people. So in theory, a lot of people think, well, Matt must have had a boyfriend from the show so far. No, I haven't. And, I'm certainly not opposed to it, but I'm this is not why I'm doing the show. I'm doing the show for LGBTQ education. I'm not doing the show so I can find a boyfriend. But I mean, it would be a side benefit of having a TV show that attracts that audience, certainly. But people assume that's happening. People assume, well, you must get 100 calls a day from random gay guys who think you're cute. No. I don't know if I've ever been called cute, if I'm being honest. In any of my relationships. No, I've never actually. So my first relationship was 3 months. He called me ugly over and over again, abused me physically, and cheated on me. A week after that, I went into a relationship for 2 weeks. He cheated on me and was never part of the relationship wholly. And things were so wrong in that relationship. I realized I was just in that relationship because I wanted to get over my first boyfriend first. And so that was wrong of me too. But that ended, and about 2 weeks later, I ended up going with a third guy for 7 months, and never in that relationship did he ever say that I was cute or that I was sexy or pretty or anything like that. He never said I love you for 7 months. He kept promising things like, oh, well, we're going to go on vacation together. We were planning vacations together. Well, we're going to get a house one day, and we're going to, get married one day, and all these promises that were great to hear. And I substituted that for hearing the words, I love you. And I guess that was okay in my mind, but it was no, I still need to hear those words, And I kept trying to figure out why he never said that. Then I realized, well, no, he just doesn't want me at all. And he's cheating on me with a bunch of other people, and so we ended up breaking up. But anyway, so yeah, I've been in 10 months of relationships over the course of 11 months of time 2 years ago, and never in that time span have I been called cute, and I've only ever been called ugly and made to feel that way. And so you have to understand about my life. I've been very lucky to never look in the mirror and go and think I'm fat. I've had people in the comments say, oh, Matt's just fat. And I'm like, that's just a homophobe that has nothing else better to say. They have no actual debate to what I'm talking about. They're just trying to come up with anything that they can of like, oh, you're fat. Like they're coming after a personal attack on something that's, they brought a personal attack to a fact fight, like I don't care about it. I delete it. I don't care. Like you can insult whatever you want, but you're entitled to your opinion. Just you're not going to be allowed to be on my platform for very long if you just spread hate. But I will say, like, I mean, I don't care about those comments, and I've never looked at myself like I'm fat or ugly or anything. And then, what was it? After those relationships, I had about a month and a half to 2 months of feeling absolutely like trash. For the first time in my life, I'm feeling like I'm ugly and I'm not worth anything because I was made to feel that way for 11 months of my life. And there's these 3 guys that just never looked at me like that, never said I was cute, never made me feel cute, never made me feel sexy. And they're just like, and people are also, there's a lot of people who speculate, especially online, because they're like, well, you're gay, Matt. So like you can't get a girl pregnant, like well, you could physically, I guess, but people are like, well, you're gay, so there's no risk of getting pregnant in a relationship with another guy, which you're right about, except for the fact that you're forgetting about trans men, which haven't had surgery yet. So like, that's still a possibility. But it's also this situation where people assume because I was with 3 cisgender male guys, well, Matt, you must have been like every other gay guy out there. And even these 3 gay guys have had hookups before they met me. So they're like automatically thinking, well, you were with him for 3 months. You must have done adult fun times with him. Well, you were with this other guy for 7 months and you even moved in together with him for a while after that, during that relationship. So you must have had adult fun times with him a lot, and you're demisexual. So like the emotional connection was definitely there. You were definitely saying, I love you to this guy. So, I really, I get a lot of the people who are like, even friends who just assume, well, you've been in these long-term relationships with 3 months and 7 months, you must have had some things. I'm like, yeah, not what you think, yeah, still having a V card, it's a situation where I'm like, being that at this time in my life, I shouldn't feel shame over that. But for 2 months after those relationships, I felt horrible about it. And I'm like, well, no one's ever wanted to do those things with me at all. And these are guys who are gay and homosexual, which means, and they're not demisexual. So, they didn't even want this with me, but they wanted it with other guys. How dare they? And I'm demisexual, so I equate a little bit of, I equate the emotional connection to a sexual attraction. And so I'm thinking to myself, well, if they've never wanted that, if they never called me cute even, then they weren't emotionally attracted to me at all, because in my mind, that's how it works for me, So I had those 2 months of just absolute feeling like trash. And that's why on the channel, you've seen the content suffer in like April and May of 2019 is all of a sudden like I just didn't make content because I just didn't feel like it. And I felt like trash. I felt like I was worthless because that's what I was to these 3 guys, And now it's 2 years later. Now we're still in the pandemic. We're finally getting a vaccine. We're finally kind of getting out of this and seeing the light at the end of the tunnel for this pandemic. And I'm like, you know what? I'm still single. And this entire pandemic would have been monumentally easier had I had a boyfriend who I was living with or something, that would have made it monumentally easier to handle this year, and not be alone. And so here I am 2 years after the fact, daydreaming about a great friend of mine being in a relationship with him. And I don't understand it. And I kind of hate myself for it because I'm using one of my friends in that way uncontrollably. And I can't stop it from happening. I can't stop from daydreaming about that when those moments happen. But there are many times now, like overnight here, I've been thinking, I'm like, do I really even want the really extremely great things to happen that are about to happen? Because I know there are a lot of great things about to happen on the show or in general, but I'm talking about like great things in my personal life, like hanging out with friends, like, do I really want to hang out with friends of mine who are terrific people? I'm going to have a great time with them. I want to have a great time with them, but because it's going to be such a high in my life of, having a day away and hanging out with great friends and having a great time, that also means there's this potential for me to daydream about one of them again, or this extreme low of, coming back to reality. Because after a daydream like this, you have to understand there's this moment of, oh crap, this isn't real. Like, oh crap, that daydream wasn't reality. And you have to slip back to reality. And that's what is the hardest part of the daydreams, is that slip back to reality and realizing they're not my boyfriend. They're never going to be my boyfriend. This is not how it works. And they're straight as hell. And I wouldn't want to stop that. I wouldn't want to change that, because they're great people. And it just, that's the hard part for me. And so I'm like, do I really want the highs if I'm not able to handle the lows? And I'm kind of just like, hey, here's how it's been going for me. I don't know if I need advice on it. Maybe if you got advice, great, share it. Or if you've gone through this too, then share that, those experiences in the comments, to let me know that I'm not alone in these feelings of these daydreams. But also it's just a matter of, I felt like, well, you're seeing everything go really well for PBR. You're seeing everything go really well for, finally pandemic's coming to a close soon, and entertainment industry is going to take a while to recover from that. But you're also seeing me not, or take days off from PBR because I'm filming or doing other projects. Like the equipment's going out tomorrow for an event. And people see that and they're like, oh my God, Matt, you must be so happy that, it's about to be Pride Month and you have a new merch drop happening. You're doing a book signing tour and you're getting invited places to speak. Schools are asking you to come in and talk to them. Like, you must be so, so excited. And I'm like, I am. This is an incredible moment for the community. This is an incredible moment for our show and our movement here at PBR and Pride Classroom. This is an incredible movement, a moment for our movement here and what we're trying to accomplish in education. But it's also like, no one in the comment section was supposed to do it, but no one of, more importantly, it's like, I don't expect anyone in the comments to do it ever, but because I'm just an educator, but then I'm like, but none of my friends took the time to be like, hey, so it's been like 2 years, you've been alone now, are you okay? Like, I know that anniversary is coming up and you're not a very happy person being by yourself, and I take it very personally. But yeah, and they know I'm tired of hearing the plenty of the fish in the sea thing, so it's like, but none of them asked, like, hey, so it's been 2 years, like, let's just get your mind off of it, like, any way I can help. Are you okay? Like, no one asked that. And I'm like, okay, thanks, And I don't know, it's just been a weird week here, celebrating such amazing things on the channel and celebrating such big milestones, and then also in the back of my head knowing, hey, this has been 2 years. At the same time, I'm like, hey, maybe all these great things are happening for a reason, and maybe that reason is to distract me from what happened 2 years ago. Maybe this is what, maybe these things are happening to make me realize, no, this week shouldn't be as terrible as I remember it, ever being. Like, just because I'm alone doesn't mean good things don't happen still, so maybe that's why the 25,000 milestone is literally happening. And I took the time to look this up. So the day that we're hitting 25,000 subscribers is the exact date 2 years ago that I broke up. And so I'm like, that is an odd coincidence. If it's just a coincidence, that's a very odd coincidence. But if it's not a coincidence, then I guess the powers that be are trying to show me that, hey, just because you're alone doesn't mean that you're really alone. And I think that's like the biggest takeaway that I can, and it's a weird takeaway to have from a 25,000 subscriber milestone. And I know this is not the normal way that people celebrate having 25,000 subscribers or whatever, but this is not a normal YouTube channel. This is an education platform. Like I said, you're all students in my mind, and you're all viewers. It's not subscribers to me. So it's like, and if I could change the subscribe button to being, rather than subscribe, become a student or something, I would change it in a heartbeat. But, this is not a normal YouTube channel. So why would this be normal? Why would this be the status quo as well? Like, why would this milestone be celebrated in any other way? I mean, I think a perfect takeaway was yesterday. Like, as bad as I felt about using my friend in that daydream for that one brief moment, I also realized maybe this anniversary is happening, and maybe this milestone is happening on the anniversary itself for a reason, and it's to make me realize that, hey, just because you don't have a boyfriend right now doesn't mean you're alone right now. And I always say it to students of like, you're not alone in the closet, but then I forget to turn the mirror on myself and realize, like, yeah, there's 25,000 of you now, and there's 1.5 million of you who've clicked on our videos. And so I'm incredibly lucky for that as well. Like, 1.5 million people clicked on our videos, and we've had a massive effect of like way over 3 million people have learned from our episodes so far, because I know a lot of those views came from schools showing this in their classroom. So it's been 20, 30 people at a time watching one episode, which counts for one view on YouTube. So I know we've had a massive effect in the world, and I go, I rarely look at the numbers. To be honest, I rarely look at the subscriber count or the view count of anything. I have to worry about the revenue of, the ad revenue, the sponsorship revenue, the Patreon, the memberships on YouTube. I have to look at, the merchandise sales and all that kind of stuff to see what's doing well. What can we do next? If people aren't liking this type of product, what can we offer next? What can we try here? Like, business-wise, I have to look at the financials to make sure that we can afford to make next week's episode. Because you got to understand, for our financials, like, a lot of people don't know this, but not necessarily the podcast. The podcast is more just a laid back thing, but like, an episode will air today, right? But you got to realize that topic for that episode was chosen 2 months ago or more. It was scripted a month and a half ago, and fully scripted. Everyone agreed on the script a month and a half ago. It was put into production and edited a month to a month and a half ago. All of our episodes for the entire month are kept on file, their edits are ready, and then on the first of every month, we're uploading all of the episodes for that month because of our paid memberships on YouTube and Patreon, where we credit everyone who supports the channel there as a producer on the end credits of every episode. So the first of every month, we're uploading all of the episodes for that entire month. And so you might be seeing this episode today, but it was edited, like podcast, by the way. Podcast was edited literally today. You're seeing it Monday. So, it's a 2-day turnaround time. But normally speaking, for a normal episode, you're talking about, it's normally a month or more since we've even touched that edit when you're seeing an episode. But, after that point, people are like, oh, that's when you're putting an episode out, so that's when you get paid. No, I wish. So and that's the reason I have to look at the financials all the time, because when you're a YouTuber, any ad revenue you earn this month is not given to you until the 20th through the 25th of the following month. So until we get paid an ad revenue for an episode now, it will be in May, and this is April. It's like, why is it that long of a turnaround time for revenue, So you get paid once a month there. Same thing with YouTube memberships. It's the same way. You get paid in the same day. Patreon, you get paid once a month from them as well. The other sides of it, the merchandise is sometimes better, sometimes worse. Like all of our Teespring stuff, like the T-shirts, the hoodies, the mugs, the water bottles, accessory pouches, all the beach towels, all that kind of stuff. That's all. When you purchase an item through that merchandise store, we automatically get that money. And we withdraw that money once a month. We choose to do that once a month, but we can withdraw that money at any time to start paying for episodes. And that greatly helps us more than you possibly know in helping produce new episodes and finance this show behind the scenes, because it does cost quite a bit of money to produce. But so that's a part of the merchandise. But even worse than that are like the book sales. Like for my 4th book, I have 4 books out now on Amazon and everywhere. You can order it everywhere you possibly can get a book. You can get this book. So now that I have 4 books out, people are like, oh, you get paid right away from that. No, Amazon takes 3 months or more to pay you for book sales. And it's not what you think it is. Royalties are not as great as they are anywhere else. So it's like, because they're like, we'll give you a percentage of the profits after the cost of printing it. Well, Amazon also owns the print shop that makes the book, so they can determine how much it costs to make the book. Great job, Amazon. And then they keep your money for 3 months or more before they pay you your royalties. And so it's like, oh, thanks, Amazon, for making money, investing my money for 3 months and earning interest on that. Great job. Thanks for making money on my money while I don't have it, Like, I'm a small business owner. I can use that money much more than your multi-billion-dollar corporation can. But thanks, Amazon. So yeah, for book sales, it's like 3 months or more to get your royalties for that. So if you purchased a book today, it'll be 3 months until I see that for the business, and so we can start paying our bills from that revenue. Then what is it? Music is even worse. Like we put out a new song, Valid, which is available now on iTunes, Amazon Music, Spotify, everywhere you can find music. YouTube Premium, it's available now. We did a music video on that on March 31st, which is International Trans Visibility Day, which is an amazing day. But we put out the music video for Valid, which is a trans positive song. And for that, it's so weird. It from our distributor, they just got back to us yesterday, was it? And they're like, yeah, so it takes 4 months or 5 months to get your revenue from any sales that happen. And by the way, you need a minimum amount of sales in order to even get any of your money. So we'll hold on to your money indefinitely until you hit that threshold. But until you get enough revenue, we won't pay you anything. Like, thanks, CD baby, you dicks. So it's like, I'm so glad I did a music song. Like, that's like, the song is more about just trying to help the LGBTQ community, and that, like, just like Shadow's First Christmas, it's not about the revenue. What it's about is supporting the community and educating the community and normalizing being LGBTQ to society. That's the first and foremost reason why we do anything on this channel. But it being a physical product, I feel like that's worth something. And like, there's a cost in printing a book. There's a cost in making a Professor Pride t-shirt. So yeah, we should make a little profit on doing that design and spending hours upon hours making this design work. We should see a return for the investment there. And that's completely understandable. But it's like, so the financials are the only thing that I have to look at on a daily basis to make sure that we can produce the next episode. And it's doing fine, like, this show pays for itself now, and it's really great. And like I said in the beginning of this episode, I finally can start planning for a future where we're in a much better city for the show, and we can have more guests on the show. We can have a proper studio space. We can, start planning much bigger things for the channel. And I'm not trying to say that we're making tons of money. We're not making tons of money. I'm saying we're making enough for this show to pay for itself right now. And this show is about at the point where it's breaking even right now at 25,000 students. And the number of views we get, and that is partly thanks to the sponsorships that are about to happen too. Like, this show barely breaks even right now. And so I'm like, but at the same time, I realize, well, if we do better in view count or better, like, I see a future for the show now where it brings in enough revenue where we can do the show better and bigger, where we can do more episodes. We can have more guests on the show. We can have more hosts of the show even. Like, I start planning this future out for the show because I see the revenue leading us there. And it's like, I would never want to take more than I have to from the show. Right now, I don't take a profit from the show. I don't get paid to do this show yet. But I see this being a thing where, like, yeah, this could be my career as an educator and just being an educator. I would love to think one day I wouldn't have to worry about getting new clients or like going out to do random gigs all by myself. I want to think about, yeah, I just have to worry about a TV show. And I'm heading a team of researchers to work on a script. Like, that's what I want to think about. I want this to be my career full time. Right now I'm very lucky that it's the pandemic where I get to do this full time and I don't have much other stuff to worry about. But once the pandemic ends and we get back to normal, I'm like, will the show suffer because of that? So that's why I'm planning this future out. And I'm very lucky to have as many of you watching as you watch. I'm so incredibly lucky to have that, because if it wasn't for that, like, we wouldn't be able to produce as many episodes. And I will say, there are times that I get depressed. Like, last night I got really depressed because I'm of that situation where I'm like daydreaming, and I wake up in the morning and whenever I'm feeling depressed, I will open up my creator studio on YouTube and I'll just read through the most recent comments you've left, and I start to realize, yeah, no matter what I want to think in my brain, no matter what my mind wants me to think about, I'm not alone. and you'll always be there. You'll always have supportive comments, even if I don't ask for them, which I never ask for them really. But there will always be, every single morning I wake up, there's always a comment complimenting the show, thanking us, thanking me specifically, or just just a very supportive comment. I always wake up to that. I'm so grateful for that. Like, years ago, I would have never imagined that happening, but now I get to be so lucky and wake up to that every morning. So I want to thank you for that from the bottom of my heart. Like, not just for 25,000 subscribers and students now, but for being here, part of this process and a part of this community. And we get to be the safe space for our community where you can be yourself and not have to worry about commenting something, and you don't have to worry about homophobes or transphobic or biphobic or aphobic people. You don't have to worry about that because we get rid of those people right away. And I'm so incredibly lucky where I get to provide the safe place and the classroom, and I now get to give master classes on stuff. I get to basically head the entire GSA club for the world that I wanted to exist when I was a kid, that I needed to exist when I was a kid. And so I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this community and for allowing me to have this GSA club online, and for supporting it in whatever way you do. I mean, whether you're just watching episodes and enjoying them and commenting, whether you're looking for advice, which we certainly give in the comments of every video, whether, you've, I don't know, been a channel sponsor, a channel supporter, a paid member of the channel on Patreon or YouTube, whether you support us with buying merchandise or book sales or our book, like, or get our songs on iTunes and Amazon and Spotify, like, no matter how you're supporting us, or just outright, like, and super chats on this entire stream, like, it doesn't matter. Like, no matter if you're here helping us finance the show in any way, or if you're here just watching it and enjoying it, I want to thank you for being here, and thank you for being a part of the 1.5 million people who've watched our show or clicked on it. I should say, thank you for being a part of our 25,000 students now. I'm so incredibly lucky and grateful for having that. I won't take that for granted ever. But thank you for being here, and thank you for joining us for our third episode of the Professor Pride podcast. Anyway, so I will end it here. But I look forward to seeing all of your comments in the comment section down below. Make sure they're LGBTQ friendly. And like this video, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. If you're watching for over an hour now, then you probably have already subscribed to our channel. But make sure you're subscribed. And if it's not okay for you to subscribe, and if your family regularly checks up on your YouTube account, either you can use a secondary YouTube account and get our content that way, or you don't have to subscribe. I don't force anyone to do that. Please know that I'm okay with that if it's not safe for you to do so. So you can just check up on us every single Friday. Fridays are when we post main episodes. This is a special episode because it's airing on a different day because of our 25,000 milestone. But normally our episodes air Fridays at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So from that point forward, you can see new episodes of the show. So make sure you're checking up on our channel every Saturday or something like that to see the episode that just aired on Friday. Normally on Fridays we air new bloopers episodes as well for our paid members on the channel. So make sure if you're a paid member, you're checking up on our community post tab or on the Patreon account to see the bloopers and outtakes of every episode. So check that out as well. Also, if you want to support us in any way, you can check out our merchandise store. We have a bunch of rainbow merchandise and LGBTQ related merchandise for whether you're gay, bisexual. We have NB stuff. We have just a ton of merchandise that is available for whatever kind of pride you want to show off, except for homophobic. We don't support that here. And then we have a new product line. We have a couple new products coming out on. I think there's like 6 or 7 new products coming out at the end of May for just June. They're only going to be available for June of 2021, so make sure you're checking that out as well. If you haven't already thought about it, then please consider joining our channel by hitting the join button down below next to the subscribe button, and joining our channel as a paid member, which means you get exclusive behind-the-scenes access to bloopers and outtakes. You get to see behind the scenes of episodes as they come out, and you get exclusive perks like knowing what episodes are about to come out before they actually air sometimes, whenever we can. So you get a bunch of access like that and a whole bunch more. So you can also share this video with others. And thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much for helping our show become what it is and being a part of our community and being a part of this safe place for LGBTQ. Have a great day, everyone. As always, I'm your host, Professor Pride. This has been PBR. Have a great day, everyone. Bye for now.